The small town of Pine Grove wasn't known for much. Nestled between rolling hills and thick forests, it was the kind of place people passed through, rarely stopping. That's what made it perfect for someone like me, a chef without work, desperate for any job I could find. When I saw the help wanted sign at the Hunter's Table, a rustic restaurant at the edge of town, I felt a spark of hope for the first time in months. The outside was nothing special. Wooden paneling weathered by years of rain and snow, antlers mounted above the entrance, and a sign that swung in the breeze. The place had a strange smell to it, like smoke mixed with something I couldn't quite place. Mr. Keller, the owner, was a large man with hands like leather and eyes that never seemed to blink enough. His gray beard was always neatly trimmed, but something about his smile never reached his eyes. Everyone in town knew he was an avid hunter. Trophies lined the walls of his restaurant. Deer heads, bear skins, and photos of him standing over various kills. People called him eccentric but skilled. The locals respected him for his hunting abilities and the way he transformed his catches into delicious meals. "You any good in a kitchen?" he asked, looking me up and down like I was something he might hunt. "Yes, sir," I replied. "Worked in restaurants for 8 years before the economy hit." He nodded slowly. "You'll start tomorrow, 5 a.m., don't be late." The restaurant was successful, especially for such a small town. People drove from miles around to taste what Mr. Keller called his special game meat. I soon learned why. The flavors were unlike anything I'd ever tasted. Rich, tender, with a complexity that seemed impossible. Whatever Mr. Keller was hunting, he knew exactly how to prepare it. My tiny apartment was only a 15-minute walk from the restaurant. It was cheap, with thin walls and windows that rattled when the wind blew. At night, the shadows seemed deeper there, stretching across my bedroom like fingers. I'd lie awake sometimes listening to the sounds of the forest beyond town. Something about those woods made me uneasy. As winter approached, the days grew shorter. I'd arrive at the restaurant before sunrise and leave after sunset, rarely seeing daylight except through the small kitchen windows. Mr. Keller became more withdrawn, disappearing for days at a time on hunting trips. He'd return with fresh meat, never letting me see it until it was properly prepared. I assumed this was part of his secret recipes, some special aging or curing process. "We all have our secrets," he'd say, locking the cellar door behind him. Didn't question it. The pay was good, and in a town with few opportunities, I couldn't risk losing this job. But something wasn't right at the Hunter's Table. I felt it in the way customers sometimes paused between bites, a flicker of confusion crossing their faces before the pleasure of the taste took over. I noticed it in the way Mr. Keller watched them eat, that strange smile never reaching his eyes, and I felt it late at night when I was alone in my apartment, unable to shake the feeling that someone was watching me through my windows, someone with eyes that never blinked enough. 6 weeks into my job, I began noticing strange things, little details that seemed off but could easily be dismissed. The first incident happened on a Tuesday night. I was closing up the kitchen while Mr. Keller counted the day's earnings. The restaurant was empty, and outside fog pressed against the windows like a living thing. As I wiped down the counters, I heard a faint scratching sound coming from the cellar door. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Mr. Keller didn't look up from his money. Old building, settling sounds. But it wasn't a settling sound. It was rhythmic, deliberate, like fingernails dragging slowly across wood. I tried to ignore it, but the sound followed me home that night, replaying in my mind as I tried to sleep. The next morning, I noticed a new lock on the cellar door. Bigger, heavier. "Health regulations," Mr. Keller explained when he caught me, looking. "Need to keep the meat secure." I nodded, though I'd never heard of such regulations. Later that week, a customer found something in their food, something small and hard. When they pulled it from their mouth, I caught a glimpse before Mr. Keller swooped in to apologize. It was small and white, curved slightly. "Just a bone fragment," Mr. Keller assured the diner. "Happens sometimes with game meat, but I'd been cooking long enough to know different animal bones." What I saw didn't look like anything I recognized, from deer or elk. That night, as I was taking out the trash, I spotted Mr. Keller's truck pulling away from the restaurant. In the bed of the truck was something large, wrapped in heavy plastic. I told myself it was a deer or maybe a bear, though hunting season for bear hadn't started yet. The strangest encounter came a week later. I'd stayed late to deep clean the ovens. Mr. Keller had left hours earlier saying he needed to process his latest hunt. The restaurant was silent except for the hum of the refrigerators and the occasional creak of the old building. I was scrubbing the inside of the main oven when I heard the cellar door open. Freezing in place, I strained to listen. Heavy footsteps moved across the floor, followed by a dragging sound. Then silence. I waited, heart pounding, but heard nothing more. After several minutes, I crept toward the kitchen door and peered into the darkened dining room. The cellar door was closed, the padlock hanging open. No one was there. "Hello?" I called out. "Mr. Keller?" No answer. Gathering my courage, I walked to the cellar door. The padlock was warm to the touch, as if someone had been holding it. With shaking hands, I pulled on the door. It didn't budge. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A small trail of dark droplets leading from the cellar door toward the back exit. In the dim light, they looked black, but I knew they were red. Fresh blood. I followed the trail to the back door. It continued into the parking lot but disappeared in the gravel. Standing in the doorway, I felt the night air against my face, carrying the scent of pine trees and something else, something metallic and raw. From the darkness of the trees beyond the parking lot, I heard a sound that made my skin crawl. A low, pained moan that was almost human, but not quite. I slammed the door shut and locked it. The next morning, Mr. Keller was already at the restaurant when I arrived, humming to himself as he unloaded packages wrapped in butcher paper from his cooler. "Got something special today," he said, not meeting my eyes. "The customers are going to love it." When I went to the back of the building later, the blood droplets were gone, the floor scrubbed clean. But near the tree line, I noticed something, glinting in the morning sun. Walking closer, I found a silver watch half buried in the dirt. It looked expensive, engraved with initials. AL. 2 days later, I overheard locals at the bar talking about Andrew Lawson, a hiker who had gone missing in the area. They mentioned he was last seen heading into the woods near the hunter's table. That night, we served a new special that Mr. Keller called exotic tenderloin. The customers raved about it, asking what kind of animal it came from. "Family secret," Mr. Keller would say with that same empty smile. I couldn't bring myself to taste it. A month passed, and with each day my unease grew stronger. 2 more hikers were reported missing in the area. The local sheriff came by the restaurant asking if we'd seen anything unusual, showing us pictures of smiling people who had vanished into the surrounding woods. "Happens every year," Mr. Keller told me after the sheriff left. "City folks don't respect the forest. Get lost, fall down ravines. Nature takes them." The way he said, "nature takes them," made my skin crawl. I started having nightmares, dreams, where I was cooking in the kitchen, only to look down and see human fingers mixed in with the vegetables I was chopping. I'd wake up gasping, sweat-soaked sheets twisted around my legs. One night, working late again, I heard Mr. Keller on the phone in his office. His voice was low, but in the quiet restaurant, words drifted through the thin walls. "Another one tomorrow." "Yes, alone." The usual spot, no ID this time. When he emerged, he seemed startled to find me still there. His eyes narrowed slightly before his face relaxed into that familiar empty smile. "Got some special meat coming in tomorrow," he said. "Need you to prep the kitchen for a new recipe." That night, someone followed me home. I never saw them clearly, just a shadow moving behind me, always maintaining the same distance. When I walked faster, they walked faster. When I slowed down, they slowed down. I ran the last block to my apartment, fumbling with my keys as I felt eyes boring into my back. Sleep was impossible. Every creak in my apartment building sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind against my window was a whisper. Around 3 in the morning, I heard a scraping sound outside. Metal against metal, like a knife being sharpened. When I peeked through the blinds, there was nothing there except the empty street and shadows between the streetlights. The next day, Mr. Keller didn't come to the restaurant until noon. His clothes were dirty and there were dark stains under his fingernails that didn't wash away. He carried a large cooler into the cellar and locked the door behind him. He stayed down there for hours. I couldn't focus on my work. My hands trembled as I chopped vegetables and prepped for the dinner rush. Something was very wrong and I couldn't ignore it anymore. When Mr. Keller finally emerged from the cellar, he seemed different, energized, almost giddy. He announced we'd be serving a special that night, something he called Hunter's Choice. The price was triple our normal dishes, but he assured me people would pay. They did. The restaurant filled up quickly, locals and tourists alike drawn by rumors of this extraordinary dish. As I cooked the sides, roasted potatoes, grilled asparagus, Mr. Keller insisted on handling the meat himself. Special preparation, he said, blocking my view. That night I heard something that chilled me to the bone. As I was taking out trash, a sound came from the cellar window. A tiny, ground-level opening obscured by bushes. It was soft but unmistakable. A whimper followed by what sounded like chains moving against concrete. My heart pounding, I crouched down and tried to peer through the dirty glass. It was too dark to see anything clearly, but something moved in. There, something that shouldn't have been there. I knew then what I had to do. I needed to get into that cellar. My chance came 3 days later when Mr. Keller received a phone call during the dinner rush. He seemed agitated, stepping outside to continue the conversation in private. For the first time since I'd started working there, he left the cellar key on his desk. With shaking hands, I grabbed it and rushed to the cellar door. The heavy padlock clicked open and I slipped inside, pulling the door mostly closed behind me. The smell hit me immediately. Copper and rot, so strong I gagged. I fumbled for a light switch and found one at the bottom of the stairs. What I saw turned my blood to ice. The cellar was larger than I expected, divided into sections. One area was set up like a butcher shop, with gleaming steel tables and knives of all sizes arranged neatly on a magnetic strip. A heavy meat cleaver showed signs of recent use, its edge still wet. Another section held freezers, industrial-sized units with heavy locks. And against the far wall, partially hidden behind plastic sheeting, was a cage. Inside, huddled in the corner, was a person, or what was left of one. Their clothes were torn, body emaciated. One of their legs ended at the knee, the stump wrapped in dirty bandages. They lifted their head as I approached, eyes wide with fear, then hope. They tried to speak, but only a hoarse whisper came out. Help. Before I could react, I heard the cellar door creak. Heavy footsteps on the stairs. Mr. Keller's voice, dangerously soft. Now, why would you go and do something like this? I turned to see him blocking the only exit, a hunting knife in his hand. Behind him stood 2 men I'd never seen before, both with the same empty smile. You've seen our operation, Mr. Keller continued, stepping closer. That's unfortunate. For you. My eyes darted around, looking for anything I could use as a weapon. Mr. Keller seemed to read my thoughts. There's nowhere to go, he said. But don't worry, we don't waste anything here. One of the men behind him laughed, a sound devoid of humor. That's when I noticed the small window I'd peered through days earlier. It was narrow, but so was I after months of barely eating due to stress. I lunged for a shelf of preserved jars, pulling it down behind me as I ran. Glass shattered, the contents, things I didn't want to identify, spilling across the floor. I heard Mr. Keller curse as he slipped. Reaching the window, I smashed the glass with my elbow, ignoring the pain as shards cut into my skin. I pushed my way through, feeling the rough edges tear at my clothes and flesh. Behind me, Mr. Keller roared with rage. "Get him! Don't let him get away!" Somehow I squeezed through the opening, tumbling onto the cold ground outside. Without looking back, I ran. Through the parking lot, past the dumpsters, into the line of trees that separated the restaurant from the main road. I could hear them behind me, crashing through the underbrush. Mr. Keller's voice carried through. "The trees. We know where you live. There's nowhere to hide." I ran until my lungs burned, until the restaurant lights were just a distant glow through the trees. The night was moonless, the forest around me a maze of shadows. Every sound, twigs snapping, leaves rustling, sent jolts of fear through me. Were they still following? Had I lost them, I couldn't go home. Mr. Keller knew where I lived. I couldn't go to the sheriff either. Who knew how many people in this town were involved in whatever horrific business was happening at the hunter's table? My only option was to get evidence, proof of what was happening in that cellar. Then I could call for help from somewhere safe. I had my phone, but out here in the woods there was no signal. I needed to circle back, find a main road, get to the highway. As I moved through the darkness, I tried to orient myself using the distant lights of town. After what felt like hours, I found a dirt road. Following it led me to the highway, where I was able to get 1 bar of cell service. My fingers trembled as I dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency? My name is... I started, then hesitated. What if they were connected to Mr. Keller? I need to report a crime. At the Hunter's Table restaurant, there's a person being held captive in the cellar. The owner, he's killing people, serving them to customers. The dispatcher's voice remained calm. Sir, that's a serious accusation. Where are you now? On Highway 16, near mile marker 42. Please, send someone. Not local police, FBI or state police. Sir, the nearest state police are over an hour away. I can send... No, not local. They might be involved. Please, there's someone still alive down there. Stay where you are, sir. Help is on the way. But I couldn't stay put. Mr. Keller and his friends could be searching for me right now. I needed to keep moving. I continued along the highway, staying just inside the tree line to avoid being spotted by passing cars. Every set of headlights made me duck deeper into the shadows. Were they Mr. Keller's? One of his accomplices? Or innocent travelers, unaware of the horror just miles away? After walking for about 30 minutes, I spotted a gas station in the distance, its fluorescent lights a beacon in the darkness. I could see a few cars parked outside. People. Safety. In numbers. As I approached, relief flooding through me, headlights appeared on the highway behind me. A truck, Mr. Keller's truck, slowed as it passed the gas station, then pulled into the lot. I froze, ducking behind a dumpster. Through the gap between it and the wall, I watched as Mr. Keller stepped out, scanning the area. Had he somehow tracked me here? Or was he just checking obvious places I might run to? He went inside the gas station. Through the large windows, I could see him talking to the clerk, showing something. A photo? My ID? The clerk nodded, pointing in the direction I'd been walking. My heart sank. In a small town like this, everyone knew everyone. Of course, the clerk would help Mr. Keller. I was the outsider. I needed to get away from the highway, away from anywhere Mr. Keller might think to look. Back into the woods. Not ideal, but my only option. Just as I was about to run, I noticed something. Mr. Keller had left his truck running, the driver's door slightly ajar. Inside, on the passenger seat, was his phone. If I could get that phone, I might find evidence, photos, messages, anything to prove what was happening at the Hunter's Table. It was a desperate plan, but I had nothing to lose. Taking a deep breath, I darted from my hiding spot toward the truck. Every step felt like an eternity, my ears straining for any sound that would indicate Mr. Keller was returning. I reached the truck and grabbed the phone. As I turned to run, a hand clamped down on my shoulder. Going somewhere? It wasn't Mr. Keller. It was one of the men from the cellar, his grip like iron. Before I could react, something hard struck the back of my head. The world went black. When I came to, I was moving, lying in the bed of Mr. Keller's truck covered with a tarp, my hands and feet bound with zip ties. The vehicle bounced along what felt like a dirt road. We were heading back into the woods. Through a small gap in the tarp, I could see trees passing by, their branches like skeletal fingers against the night sky. We were taking a different route, not back to the restaurant, somewhere more remote. The truck eventually stopped. I heard doors opening, voices, Mr. Keller and at least 2 others. The tarp was yanked away and I squinted against the sudden beam of flashlights. "Thought you could run," Mr. Keller said, his face half in shadow. "Nobody runs from me, not in my woods." They dragged me from the truck. We were in a small clearing surrounded by dense forest. In the center was a fire pit, and next to it a wooden table with straps attached to its corners. The kind of table you'd use to field dress a large animal, or a person. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Those people, why?" Mr. Keller smiled, that same empty smile that never reached his eyes. "Business, mostly. Do you have any idea what people will pay for exotic meats, for tastes they can't get anywhere else?" "You're feeding people human meat," I said, the words feeling surreal as they left my mouth. "And they love it," one of the other men laughed. "Come back week after week for more. Special cut of long pig, we call it." "But there's more to it than money," Mr. Keller continued, pulling a knife from his belt. The same hunting knife I'd seen in the cellar. "There's the hunt, the skill it takes to select the right prey, to make them disappear without anyone connecting the dots." He nodded to his companions, who began to drag me toward the table. "No one's coming for you," Mr. Keller said. "That 911 call went straight to my brother-in-law. Been the emergency dispatcher here for 15 years. My last hope evaporated. No help was coming. I struggled against my restraints, but the zip ties only cut deeper into my wrists. They lifted me onto the table, securing me with the straps. The wood was stained dark, and up close I could smell old blood soaked into the grain. "We usually like to keep our special ingredients alive longer," Mr. Keller said, testing the edge of his knife with his thumb. "Fresher meat that way, but you've caused too much trouble." As he raised the knife, a sound cut through the night. Sirens. Distant but drawing closer. Mr. Keller froze, his head snapping toward the sound. "What the hell?" One of his companions looked panicked. "You said no one was coming!" The sirens grew louder. Through the trees, blue and red lights flashed. "Someone else must have called it in," the third man said, already backing away. "I'm not getting caught for this." He turned and ran into the woods. The second man hesitated only briefly before following. Mr. Keller cursed, looking from me to the approaching lights and back again. The knife hovered above my chest. "This isn't over," he growled, then cut the strap holding my right arm. "When they ask, tell them it was all you. You did this, or I'll find you again." With that, he disappeared into the darkness of the forest, leaving me half free and the knife embedded in the wooden table beside me. With my free hand, I managed to undo the other straps and cut the zip ties on my ankles. I was just getting to my feet when the first police car burst into the clearing, headlights blinding me. "Police, hands where I can see them." I raised my hands, relief washing over me. "There's a person in the cellar of the hunter's table," I shouted. "They need help." Several officers approached cautiously, guns drawn. One spoke into his radio. "We need units at the hunter's table restaurant. Possible hostage situation." They handcuffed me. A precaution, they explained. I noticed something that made my blood run cold. On the belt of one officer was a small leather pouch with familiar initials tooled into it. RK. Robert Keller. "That pouch," I said, nodding toward it. "Where did you get it?" The officer looked down, then met my eyes. For a moment I saw something flicker across his face, the same emptiness I'd seen in Mr. Keller's smile. "Gift from a friend," he said simply. They didn't believe me at first. Why would they? A story about a restaurant serving human meat, a town conspiracy, a hidden cellar of horrors. It sounded insane. But they found the cellar. They found the cage, the butcher tables, the freezers. What they didn't find was the person I'd seen, the survivor with the missing leg. And they didn't find Mr. Keller or his companions. The restaurant was closed down, sealed with police tape. Forensic teams descended on the small town of Pine Grove, their presence drawing media attention from across the state. Samples were taken. From the freezers, the kitchen, even leftover food from plates. I was held for questioning for 3 days. The same questions, over and over. My story never changed because the truth doesn't need to be remembered. It just is. On the 4th day, a detective I hadn't seen before entered the room. She wasn't local. Her badge identified her as state police. Her eyes were tired but kind. "We got the test results back," she said, sitting across from me. "The meat in the freezer, and you were right." A chill ran through me despite the warm room. "And the person? The survivor?" She shook her head. "No sign of them, but we found blood. Evidence from at least 7 different people. Bone fragments that match the description of what you saw a customer find. You were right about all of it. What about Mr. Keller? Have you found him?" Something crossed her face. Hesitation, maybe fear. "No, we have officers searching the woods, but it's a lot of ground to cover." She pushed a paper across the table. "You're free to go. We'll need you to stay available for the trial whenever we catch him." "I can't go back to my apartment," I said. "He knows where I live. We can arrange protective custody, a safe house until this is resolved." But I knew it wouldn't be resolved. Not really. As I was escorted out of the police station, I saw the news vans, the reporters hungry for details of the cannibal chef story. The headlines would fade eventually, replaced by the next sensational crime. But Mr. Keller was still out there, somewhere in those woods. The safe house was 2 states away, a small apartment with reinforced doors and windows that didn't open. I was given a new name, a cover story. The detective checked in weekly, then monthly. Always the same update. No sign of Mr. Keller. 6 months passed. I started to believe I might be safe. I found a job at a small bakery, nothing to do with meat. I made a few acquaintances, though never friends. Trust doesn't come easily anymore. Then, last night, I woke to a sound outside my bedroom window. Metal against metal, like a knife being sharpened. I froze, listening. Silence. Had I dreamed it? A remnant of trauma playing tricks on my mind? As I got up to check the locks for the 3rd time that night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My hand shook as I opened it. There was no message, just a photo. My new workplace, the bakery, taken from across the street. In the reflection of the bakery window, barely visible, was a figure with a familiar stance, shoulders slightly hunched, head tilted in that predatory way. Below the photo was a single line of text. "The hunt isn't over. See you soon, chef." I called the detective immediately. She promised to send someone to check the area to increase patrols, but we both know the truth. If Mr. Keller wants to find me, he will. Tonight I sit in my locked apartment, a kitchen knife beside me. Outside, the wind moves through the trees like whispers. Every sound makes me jump. A neighbor's door closing, a car passing by, the building settling. I keep thinking about the customer who found that bone fragment, how they paused, confusion crossing their face before the pleasure of the taste took over. How many people in that town knew? How many people took part in his horrible business? And how many more are out there in other small towns with their own secrets? I don't know if I'll ever truly be safe, but I do know this. Next time, I won't run. Next time, I'll be ready. Because some hunts have 2 hunters, and I'm no longer prey.